Welcome to this video on the Forsaken, or the Tribes of the Moon, from the tabletop role-playing game Werewolf, the Forsaken. Forsaken is the New World of Darkness or Chronicles of Darkness analog to Werewolf the Apocalypse. What the two have in common is 9-foot-tall furry killing machines who are both man and wolf, mortal and spirit. Where they differ is that the Uratha, as the werewolves are known, slew their progenitor, Urfala, the Father Wolf, the guardian of Pangaea, the primordial world, and the Shadow, the spirit world. The Father Wolf had grown old and feeble, and some of his children overthrew him in order to take over his duties as keeper of harmony between the worlds. Only the Forsaken are opposed by the spirits who want to freely interfere with the material world, the humans who rightly fear them, and their own kin, the Pure, who oppose the slaying of Father Wolf. But without further ado, the Tribes of the Moon. The Blood Talons. The Blood Talons are descended from Fenris-Ur, also called the Destroyer Wolf. They believe themselves to be the strongest of the tribes, just as Fenris-Ur was the strongest of the firstborn. The first wolves of the Blood Talons bested Fenris in honorable combat, so he agreed to act as the tribe's totem. Suthar Anzuth are holy warriors who look beyond the deception that is civilization. Life, and especially the life of a predator, requires battle and bloodshed. A Blood Talon seeks to become the perfect embodiment of their warrior ethos and to wage war, whether alone or in a pack, in an ideal and honorable way. Members of the tribe tend to lean towards aggression, usually in a prickly or unbending way. This makes it hard for them to fit in with much of human society, even before the first change. But Blood Talons who look at them can see the soul of a warrior in their eyes, marking them as one of the Suthar Anzuth. The training of novice Blood Talons involves harsh physical training in both combat and endurance. Learning to be a Blood Talon requires training the mind as much as the body. The tribe is not one of mindless rage or frenzied bloodlust. A Blood Talon trains himself to master fear, to allow it to pass over him, leaving only grim determination and the desire for glory. Before an Uratha's initiation, he will likely be well scarred. The test itself depends on the auspice of the wolf. A Rahu's initiation will, unsurprisingly, be a straightforward battle, usually against another cub, or to fight, or rather survive, against a more experienced wolf for a fixed duration. A Kahalith may be required to recite every weakness of a werewolf's enemies while being attacked. If the cub succeeds, they then receive a ritual scar, marking them as a Blood Talon and an equal in the tribe. Organization in the tribe is straightforward. Among the Talons, the best warrior leads the pack. Meetings between packs of Blood Talons is usually marked by boisterous celebrations, contests of strength and endurance, and some friendly bloodletting. In multi-tribe packs, the Blood Talons will defer to wolves of other tribes as alpha, unless it is a matter of war. Like every tribe, the Blood Talons subdivide into various lodges. The Lodge of Garm are the elite Blood Talons. Their name comes from the Norse figure Garmr, the Hound of Hell, who guards the goddess of the underworld, and will be loosed during Ragnarok to slay and be slain by the god Tyr. And a battle against members of the Lodge of Garm is akin to walking into hell itself. They hold a biannual rite of mass combat against each other that ends in bestowing ancient runes on those who perform best in the battle. The Lodge of Swords dedicates itself to the more cerebral aspects of war, seeking to be great war leaders as well as great warriors. But the Lodge is viewed with mistrust by the Forsaken because their totem, Nomad Wolf, is a child of the Dire Wolf, who is the totem of the Predator Kings, one of the Pure tribes. They believe that battle must serve a higher purpose. The Lodge of Swords believes that they must go further than anyone else, to forge the Blood Talons into something greater than what they are, to tip the balance of conflict between the Forsaken and the Pure. The Lodge of Wendigo stands in contrast to the rest of the tribe, as they seek victory through stealth and disruption. Members of the Lodge go dark for weeks, and even months, as they sneak into enemy territory to reconnoiter their weakest points. but by the time the Wendigo attack an enemy, usually by ambush, they know their enemy as well as themselves. Glory is hard to come by for the Lodge, not only because they bend the laws of Fenris near to their breaking point, but they are also hounded by rumors of dark rituals that involve forbidden consumption of human flesh and blood. The Bone Shadows. The Bone Shadows are the tribe of Kamduis the Death Wolf, who wandered the length and breadth of the earth to learn the ways of those she hunted. The Death Wolf loved all that she saw, from the creatures of the earth to the creatures of the air and the water, even as she devoured them. She questioned Father Wolf about what lay beyond, but rather than tell her, the Great Wolf told her to continue her hunt and taught her the paths into the high spirit courts. The Death Wolf made pacts with the spirit lords of the shadow so that she could ease the burdens of Father Wolf. Yet when she returned to the world, Father Wolf was dead, and she mourned for all that he had not taught her, of the knowledge he had taken to his grave. Then she returned to her search. In time, a group of wise Uratha created a ritual of such complexity and power that they were able to either bind or attract the attention of the Death Wolf in the shadow. The first Bone Shadows then struck a pact with the Death Wolf to act as their totem. Since then, the Bone Shadows have sought knowledge that died with Father Wolf, and there is nowhere they will not go, from wildernesses untouched by human hands, to the hearts of human cities, to the depths of the shadow, driven by an unquenchable curiosity. Bone Shadows are marked before their first change by a sense of otherness. They are aware that there is something beyond their ability to perceive, a sense that they know they have but cannot use or understand completely, like a newborn only being able to perceive hazy shadows. They are also marked by an overwhelming curiosity about the unseen world, even when what they learn or see terrifies them. Following the first change, joining the Bone Shadows seems to be the best way to finally tear away the shroud that obscures their vision and see the world beyond the world. And the Bone Shadows are more than willing to take a cub as far as they are willing to go, and then push them further. Before a Bone Shadow can be initiated into the tribe, they must possess an intimate knowledge of the shadow and its denizens, as well as the rituals and bands needed to treat with or bind them. They learn the meaning behind the tribe's maxim, pay each spirit in kind. Those spirits who deal honorably with the Death Wolves will be shown honor. Those who do not will be brought down. Finally, the Bone Shadows take their cubs into the Shadow Realm to treat with a spirit ally, or locate the answer to some question or riddle. Bone Shadows are inducted based on the endorsement of the spirits the Bone Shadow cub must deal with during their quest. Bone Shadow pacts tend to be steeped in ritual. Every action a pact takes requires that certain observances and auguries occur before it can be done. Even more martial Bone Shadows deliberate on strategy and portents before entering into battle. Apart from pack or tribe rituals, Bone Shadows rarely gather in large groups. The tribe prefers to meet individually, to put the correct information in the correct hands at the correct moment. In multi-tribal packs, Bone Shadows prefer to counsel their fellows rather than lead. When dealing with the spirits, Bone Shadows are best suited to make the diplomatic overtures. The Lodge of Prophecy is the oldest of the Bone Shadow lodges and the undisputed masters of divination. With the blessings of their totem, the Blind Owl, they peer into the swirling sandstorm that their less aware kin call the future, to steer not only the Bone Shadows, but all of the Uratha away from disaster. They are called prophets, but they warn all who listen that the future is always being shaped by the present, so theirs is an unending vigil, to see and prepare for what is to come. Where the prophets wander in the misty realms of the future, the Lodge of the Harbingers are wolves of the present. They are the smallest lodge of all the tribes and one of the most anxious, as they pore over the prophecies left by their predecessors and look for their signs in the present. They are not unlike storm chasers, looking into the spirit world and the physical world for the warnings predicted in ancient prophecies, and then spread their information to the rest of the tribe. Finally, the Lodge of Death hunts the realms for the lore of long-lost spirits. This means that they, of all the wolves, have the greatest knowledge of the underworld and the least fear of death. In fact, it is whispered that, upon induction into this lodge, The wolf's totem spirit whispers into the initiate's ear the precise hour and manner of their death. The Hunters in Darkness. The children of Father Wolf stalked their prey under the sun and moon. The greatest of the firstborn who hunted at night was Hikaun the Black Wolf. She could find a trail in darkness as well as Father Wolf. When the pack rested at night, she took the watch as they slept. None among the firstborn were as swift or as quiet as the Black Wolf. The Aratha who had become the Hunters in Darkness spent years stalking the Black Wolf through the world and the shadow. Finally, they cornered her in her realm and demanded her patronage as the prize of their hunt. She granted them this and became their tribal totem. The Hunters in Darkness, or Menina, are the most primal of the Aratha, marking large swaths of wilderness as their domains, and tending to the land and spirits of those places, a duty inherited by them from Father Wolf. The targets of the Hunter's ire can be reckless humans, wild spirits, or even other werewolves. The Hunter's stewardship of their territory involves a lot of quiet observation, subtle warnings to intruders, and finally, the complete disappearance of those marked for death. Though their preference is for the wilds, the Hunters in Darkness do find their way into the urban jungle. After all, the shadow exists there as well, and the spirits are also in need of aid. These Hunters in Darkness adapt to become as dangerous on the streets and in the alleys as they would be in the woods and valleys. Werewolves destined to become Hunters in Darkness are fiercely independent, cavalier, and taciturn. They tend to keep their thoughts to themselves and accept little advice or concern from their own families. Their trust is not easily earned, but their disdain is especially by those who rob or wrong them. It is usually such rage that causes their first change. The Hunters in Darkness take these proprietorial and harsh instincts and channel them into the protection of the sacred places of the Aratha, usually by one who has some of the same experiences as the cub. In time, the Hunters in Darkness will demand complete loyalty, but they, of all the Aratha, give the greatest respect to the desire for personal space. As their name suggests, the Hunters in Darkness train their cubs to be the foremost trackers and stalkers of the Aratha. When the time comes for the rite of initiation, the cub is tested on his abilities. The simplest tests his stealth and mastery of terrain. More creative initiation rites involves the rite master hiding a fetish somewhere in the territory for the cub to find. Others have also been tested by being assigned to track and count coup on an elusive spirit ally of the hunters, or even an older, more experienced hunter. The Hunters in Darkness are especially wolfish in their thinking, which translates to how their packs function. The greatest hunter and warrior is the alpha, and he, or she, is due absolute loyalty. In that vein, the hunters also endeavor to have two alphas, a male and a female, with the stronger of the two acting as the, prime alpha. The purpose of this system is that the secondary alpha may offer advice and concerns to the prime alpha without either one losing face to the rest of the pack, as it is not a challenge to the alpha's authority since they technically hold the same rank. Among the hunter lodges, the Lodge of Harmony seeks to restore that which was sacred but has been devastated. The Suluka, or cleansers, are patronized by the rooting boar, who teaches them how to ritually cleanse the earth. Their purpose is to restore hunting grounds for the Aratha. Sometimes this involves taking land from other Forsaken who are not properly maintaining it. The Lodge of the Seasons aligns their rites, goals, and activities with the four seasons, as their name suggests. In summer, they go to war, perform their death rites in the fall, their healing rites in the winter, and their rites of renewal in the spring. Every werewolf who joins the lodge is chosen by one of the seasons, and each season has its time of prominence during the year. They are not Gaia worshippers in the sense that they do not assign agency to the earth, nor does it have a particular interest in the Aratha. They aspire to act in tune with the natural laws of the world, as they understand them. The Lodge of Wrath carries the motto of the Hunters in Darkness to its logical conclusion. They defend their territory and sacred places against those who would violate them. Trespassers who enter the territory of the Aratha aren't gambling with their lives, they are offering them up. but not every violation requires death. In many instances, suffering works just as well, whether that involves terrorizing a mortal for a few days, or nailing their hand to a tree and forcing them to tear themselves loose before limping away to seek help. The Iron Masters. Curiosity is natural in children, and the most curious of Father Wolf's children was Sagrum the Red Wolf. Every day, Red Wolf pestered Father Wolf with questions about why the rain fell, why the mountains stood where they did, and why the wind blew. Father Wolf answered each of these questions in the same way. They do, and it is good that they do. Nothing more need be known. Of course, just because rarely satisfies the curious pup. Sagrum wanted to know because he also wanted to change what he saw, if only to see what would happen next. When Father Wolf was slain, Red Wolf watched as he died. He had taken no part, yet he wondered what would happen. Father Wolf then seized Red Wolf and held him down with a single paw. With his dying words, Father Wolf growled, "Things will not be as they ought. Note well how they go, and remember what I told you was good." Sagrum took up Father Wolf's duty of watching over humanity and their influence over the shadow. The Uratha who became the Iron Masters found the Red Wolf and persuaded him to become their patron by deploying an unstoppable barrage of facts and logic. The Iron Masters, or Farsil Luhal, understand that Pangaea is gone and will never return. They seek to cultivate humans into a resource to protect their territories and manage the shadow. The Iron Masters do not wish to be humans, only to take what is best from humanity and preserve what Father Wolf told them was good. They seek to balance the relentless creativity and logic of the human mind with the brutal instincts of the wolf. After all, the superior predator is the one most able to adapt. And the Iron Masters have adapted to the urban environment almost perfectly. Those who were likely to become Iron Masters were risk-takers, flexible thinkers, and people who were afraid of being left behind. Whether it was technology, art, politics, a Farsal Luhal cub is as close to the edge as he can be. Passing the Iron Master's rites of initiation is very simple. Cheat to win. The Right Master will not mention this though, as the cub is expected to discover an unorthodox way out of a seemingly impossible task, or manages to use a standard tactic despite the overwhelming odds. The strength of the Iron Masters is in adaptation, and it reflects in the diversity of how they choose to organize themselves. Some packs are surprisingly egalitarian in their decision-making, with the Alpha acting as a moderator. Other packs treat their Alpha as an absolute ruler, whose leadership cannot be questioned except as a challenge to his honor. Regardless of how the packs organize, the entire tribe makes careful use of the tools of modern communication to stay in touch with their tribe mates. But they are mindful that phones are rarely secure, and the internet never is, which is why the Iron Masters make sure to use Wolf VPN, or some other means of encrypted communication. The lodges of the Iron Masters blend modern practice with ancient spiritualism. The Lodge of Lightning takes the idea of adaptability to its extreme, and seeks the path of least resistance to whatever their goal is, in the same way that lightning does, suddenly and powerfully. The Lodge of Metal is one of the oldest lodges of the Uratha. They are expert craftsmen, originally of weapons and fetishes, but with the advance of technology, more complex devices, including cars, computers, and even airplanes. The Lodge of Metal are prolific information sharers, to the point that it makes the Uratha outside of the Lodge uncomfortable about loose lips sinking ships. The Lodge of Scrolls is the largest and most unusual of the Iron Masters. First, because they seek to take the largely oral history and traditions of the Uratha and reduce them to writing, hence the Lodge of Scrolls. Second, the Lodge of Scrolls has no lodge totem. Their duty is entirely self-imposed, to reclaim the knowledge of the world and the shadow that was lost with Father Wolf. The Storm Lords. The death of Father Wolf struck Pangaea, the shadow, and all who dwelled in both worlds with fear. The eldest, toughest, and meanest of the firstborn, Huzaruth the dire wolf, snarled, raged, and swore revenge against his brothers and sisters who had slain their father. The second of the firstborn, Skolas the Winter Wolf, even as he joined in the slaying of his father, was struck with the enormity of what he had done and what the world had lost. He howled his grief to the sky, a howl that filled his packmates with fear. Then Skolas realized that he had been weak. His grief weakened his brothers and sisters when they needed strength and certainty. Winterwolf commanded his siblings who had slain Father Wolf and led them into the world they had created. The werewolves that became the Storm Lords pursued the Winter Wolf and demanded that he do his duty to them as he had his brothers and sisters, that he lead them. After a long battle, Winter Wolf agreed to become their tribal totem, so long as the Storm Lords never showed him, or any other, weakness. The Storm Lords, or Eminir, bear the burden of leadership and responsibility for the fate of the Forsaken. They are willing to suffer what others cannot, and do what others will not. They are unbending, strong, and show no fear either of those in front of them or behind them. Those who are destined for the Storm Lords are assertive, vigorous, confident to the point of arrogance, but always in service to a worthwhile goal. Failure causes them fury, but they still press forward, advancing towards their first change and their true power. Storm Lords impress upon their cubs that purpose must always accompany power. Even with the strength of the Winter Wolf, they can only command others as far as they are willing to follow, and they can only command after they have been fully initiated into the tribe. Fortunately, the Storm Lord's rite of initiation is as straightforward as it is unforgiving: to endure pain. In some cases, the cub is stripped naked and instructed to face a storm without uttering a sound. Some packs prefer to put their initiates through the gauntlet, walking between the lines of the pack and enduring savage blows without so much as a whimper. The rite is meant to expose those who are weak and unprepared. The strong draw more strength from the trials. Every blow, every wound that does not kill a Storm Lord fuels his cold fury to destroy his enemies by becoming the storm itself. A pack of leaders sounds like it would immediately fall to internal strife and egos, but Stormlord packs lessen this stress by competing for superiority in other ways. Some Eminir seek to master the lore of their auspice, or some other useful skill to the pack. In a multi-tribal pack or a new pack, it is practically a given that a Stormlord will present himself as a worthy candidate to be Pack Alpha. However, Stormlords are proud, not egomaniacal. Every Stormlord is expected to know his or her own strengths and weaknesses, and to not endanger the pack by seeking leadership for the sake of vanity. The Lodge of Crows recognizes that manipulation and deception are tools that the powerful wield in service to their cause, whether it is against their enemies or even their own followers. Followers of Crow, or the spirit calling itself Crow, are ruthless, discreet, and cunning, usually operating through cat's paws and proxies to achieve their goals. The Lodge of Thunder is the second of the Stormlord's three pillars, and their philosophy is forthright: the strong should rule, and the weak should obey. The Thunder Lords prove their worth through displays of brutality and charisma. This doesn't mean that they don't keep some nasty techniques in reserve, but the Lodge generally promotes itself as warriors and peers among whom disputes over status can be solved very simply, with weapons in hand. The Lodge of Winter walks the path of wisdom, where the other two pillars of the storm observe cunning and honor. The Winter Wolves are deliberate, studying their opponents and allies to learn their strengths and weaknesses, what rights would empower them, and which they would be susceptible to. Members of the Lodge of Winter diligently study new gifts and rights to expand their options of how to achieve victory. And those were the tribes of the moon. I liked the werewolves of Forsaken more than Apocalypse. The Oratha seem to be a bit more focused and purposeful than the Garu. The Forsaken have a clear reason for their existence, though they differ in specific duties and methods. The Forsaken have been called the Spirit Border Patrol since the game came out, but the advantage that this version of Werewolf has over its predecessor is that it's tighter and more focused straight out of the box. There is less ambiguity about why werewolves exist and what they're meant to do, and certainly a lot less pan-shitting stupidity about how the Aratha came to be in their current state. Anyway, that's all I have for now. Until next time.